Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go. Hi.
Hello.
Okay, promised last week, and I follow through on most of my commitments.
Most.
Those I make to the podcast people, I generally follow through on. So I promised I'd be back with more info about the Clarity on Fire Patreon community meetup that's happening this month for our Patreon members. So it's going to be on Sunday, June 27th at 1:00 Eastern. It's going to be a very fun book club, but so easy because you don't even really have to read either of the books. You can actually just open it up and do one thing from one of the books.
You could even listen to our podcast episodes about them and get enough information to know what to try in advance.
Totally. So we're going to give people the option of doing a little something from Outrageous Openness or an experiment from E Squared. Whatever floats your boat, whatever ideas either of the books give you, flip it open, try something. And then we're going to have a meeting of the minds and spirits on the 27th, led by Madison. But I'm definitely going to be there too. And
share some stories.
We're going to talk about our universe stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure we'll also get into blocks that come up around it and challenges. And was that a thing or did I just make that up? We're going to have fun because we really love those books. They have been instrumental for us and instrumental for a lot of people that we've coached. And we're going to dive in and have fun experimenting with them this month.
And I feel like it's fun to do the experiments on your own, but it's really fun to have people to share them with and to hear their stories and to get inspired. So it's a much more fun thing to do in a group of people. So that's why we're just bringing everybody together and let's do it collectively at the same time.
Okay.
Milk the most joy out of it.
Yep. And of course we can share past stories, but the goal is to really lean into trying something this month and then kind of going from 0 to 60 this month on something and then reporting on how that happened and on the twists and turns that might have taken place.
So if you are not in our Patreon community yet,
you can be.
You should be.
You can be and you should be.
You should be.
Okay. So it's patreon.com/clarityonfire. And the tier we're talking about is our Flame tier. It's the $6 a month tier. It gets you access to bonus content and all of the community stuff. So the Discord group where we have, chats and questions and little sidebars going on all the time. And
monthly meetups
led by Madison, our community ambassador, and quarterly Rachel hangouts on Zoom too. And of course, other random stuff we might decide to add at any point. And then there's just a $3 tier, which is just bonus content. If you don't like the idea of community and you just want random stuff from us occasionally, we will also deliver you that.
But you won't get to hang out for the book club we just described.
No, but that's okay.
But that's okay.
Want to.
If you don't want to.
No one's forcing you. So if that sounds fun, then join us for a little experiment with the universe this month.
So
now on to our normal person.
Yeah, you interviewed a normal person
who's also a member of our Patreon group and also has great stories from the universe.
So there you go. Tying it all together.
Sure. Yes. Natalie, you want to just read her bio first and then I'll...
Yeah. Okay. Natalie Burgess is a hummingbird who has spent the last 20 years doing nothing but following her curiosity wherever it led her, to different jobs, different cities, different states, taking on new adventures, picking picking up experiences, education, and pieces of a career along the way. Now, with the wanderlust out of her system, she is taking on her biggest adventure yet, putting down roots to be near her family and in her career as a high school teacher. And you're going to talk about that long
13
journey.
years. Yes. From identifying something that she thought would be a dream job to actually getting that dream job.
So that's going to be interesting. I can't wait to hear the story because most people are wanting it like yesterday. And in this case, it took 13 years.
Yep. Which were not full of misery.
Right. I think
there was plenty of highs and lows and all sorts of things in between. Mm-hmm. And also just a lot of reassurance in this episode that like your life can take a very winding route and you can still end up exactly where you're supposed to be at exactly the right time.
I hope that's
a real comfort.
Very reassuring to a lot of people.
I think it will be. So,
all right. Well, I'm excited to hear it.
Okay, let's do it. Hello, Natalie.
Hi, Rachel.
This is very fun. You're again one of the another person who I get to actually hang out with on video for an hour, which normally I don't do. So
I know
we've both got our quarantine hair going right now.
Yeah.
I've got like 7 months style of roots. It's really bad. I have a hair appointment on the calendar. So we read your intro a couple minutes ago. By the time people are hearing this, they will have already heard that. So they kind of get your story. But I really wanted to talk to you after this latest development unfolded in your life, where this particular job you've been trying to get for 13 years actually came around. And I want to talk about like the crazy journey of sort of going full circle and ending up back home and doing a job that you've been trying to do for a super long time. And all of the crap that goes into not like making that happen, maybe allowing that to happen, and the mental, emotional ride you have to go on in order to, I don't know, have patience. So there's a lot that goes into that. Okay, so let's back up though. How far back do you want to take us? Do you want to take us back 13 years? I mean, that's maybe the longest I've ever asked someone to take us back.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. God, no, I think I actually have to go back a little further.
Do it.
Because, I was that person that had no plan when I went to college. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just decided to follow whatever I thought was interesting and just made a degree out of it. And I was like, cool, there we go. I'm done. And so when college was over, I was just like, hey, I just don't want to be here because I was back in Wyoming. I was like, anywhere but here, I just have to go. And so I was thinking about joining the military. I was going to anything, but it was right after 9/11. So I just aged myself a little bit, but it was right after 9/11. So they weren't really looking for social degrees. They were looking for tech degrees, and my degree was in psychology, sociology. So I was just like, okay, well, I'm not doing missiles because that would have put me in North Dakota or Wyoming, and we just say no. And so I just started thinking, where do I want to go? My dad had passed away my junior year of college, and he was only 49. He had passed away from cancer. And I thought, life is just too short for this. And I wanted to take any opportunity that came up. So I moved to New York, upstate New York. And then my friend was like, I'm moving to Chicago. I'm like, cool, I want to go to Chicago. I've never been to Chicago, so let's go. So I moved to Chicago, and then I was like,
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. Okay. I've lived everywhere. Then I was like, well, I actually want to go back to New York. So I moved back to New York. And while I was sitting in an office in New York, I was like, I hate my life. Like, I hate this so much. I hated sitting in a desk. I hated being in an office. And I was just staring out the window thinking, like, there has to be something better for me. And I decided to go back to be a teacher. And so that's how I ended up going back to school. So I went back to school to be a teacher, and I got a degree in history and became a social studies teacher. But when I graduated, could not get a job. And the town I was in Colorado, I absolutely loved. And I was like, I just want to be here. I want to teach social studies. Like, this is what I want. Could not even get looked at for an interview or anything. So I ended up getting a job somewhere else in English. Like, I had added an English endorsement and got hired immediately in some other place. And I was just like, okay, well then it was just like this huge rocky path after that of budget cuts and toxic environments and 1-year only positions that then got absorbed at the end of the year. So then they weren't available anymore. And it was like, for a long time, I went back and forth going, maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing at all. Like maybe I'm just, because it's like the universe was working against me, you know, that I was like, nothing's working out. Everything keeps falling apart. And so I would move to different places, you know, and I was just still checking things out. And I just, every couple of years when I would end up out of a job, I'm like, I just don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And I actually met you right when I was moving out here thinking I need a plan B, because if I cannot continue to teach, I need to find something else that I want to do. And the thing that you said that stuck with me was, I'm not helping with that. You were like, I'm not giving you a plan B.
Did I say that?
Yeah. I was like, what do you mean? And you're like, well, clearly you love teaching. You're like, if you don't have a plan B, then plan A has to work. And I was like, well, damn right. So then we started just talking about my cover letter and how to make myself a little bit more marketable. And then I got the teaching job, but it was a 1-year only, you know, and then that led me to the position I'm in now. And then my mom was in the hospital in March, and I was like, am I okay being 2,000 miles away, or do I want to go back and be closer? And I decided I wanted to be closer. So I threw out some feelers. And within a week, I had put in my resignation, got the interview, got the dream job in the exact place that I wanted to be at, doing the thing I wanted to do. And now I'll be close to my family. So,
okay. Now we got to go back and dissect that whole story.
I know.
Okay. So how did you know? So I think a lot of people find themselves in that position that you were in back in New York when you were like, I can't take this. I'm going to go back to school. And a lot of the time when people say I'm going to go back to school, it's kind of reactive. It is based on like, oh, the real world's not going so well for me. I liked school. Might as well go get a graduate degree in something and like put the real world off for a few more years. And so I don't know if there was any of that going on for you. Obviously, you actually were attracted to teaching, but how did you know, like, you know, I'm doing that for the right reasons, and I actually really do want to be a teacher?
I really had to sit and ask some hard questions about what it is that I was looking for. I had all this crazy experience. You know, I had lived all over the world and had moved by that time still in upwards of, 15 times. I mean,
how many times has it been now?
Oh, well,
it's about to be what?
I'm about to move into my 41st home.
41 homes.
Yeah, which not 40. I mean, I think it's like 17 cities and some odd states. I don't know. I lost count somewhere along the line.
That's practically one home a year for your whole life, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's either 6 months to a year I've moved of my entire adult life. And then before that, it was every few years with the military because I grew up with my dad in the Air Force. So
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So the first 12 were Air Force. Yes, I'm a pro. I'm a professional. But I started thinking about like what it was that was bothering me about being in an office, you know, because like the work was easy. Everybody was nice enough. I made enough money, and like it wasn't that. It was just like I was so unfulfilled and I was so just unhappy. Like every day was exactly the same. And I'm a thriver, so I'm all for that. Like I like the stability. I like knowing where my paycheck's coming from, but I had no purpose. You know, I'd just sit there and do whatever they asked me to do. And I was always administrative stuff. And I was just like, this sucks. And I kept looking at other people's lives saying, would I want to do that? Like, would I be interested in that? And I'm like, no, I don't want anybody else's life here. Like, this is not anything that interests me. And I had to think about what would have made me feel okay with my daily life. And that's when it came down to like, I want to teach. And like, I didn't go back to get a master's. I ended up getting basically a second bachelor's. I didn't get a master's until later. Because like, I don't know, just it was like a weird thing with the program, but I went back for like a post-bac, just because I knew it's what I wanted to do. I knew that using all my experience would best suit kids. And I hated high school. I hated it with like every fiber of my being. And I'm like, if I can make that better for a kid, if I can make that experience a little less painful and a little less traumatic and a little less difficult, like that's where I belong, you know?
Yeah. And then you did it.
And then I did it.
And you very quickly, you kind of outlined this. We got to go back and talk about it. You very quickly experienced a lot of letdowns, like a lot of bureaucracy.
A lot of politics.
Right. Ton of politics. Just lack of budget, I'm sure, being a part of not being able to get hired for the role you actually want to get hired for, not having anything last for a long time, like having to like jump from job to job every year. And when I first met you, you were really down in the dumps. Mm-hmm. Like you were really questioning everything. I mean, and like you'd been dealing with it for like a decade, which let's pause and talk about that for a second too. Okay. Because I don't want people to think you were miserable for an entire decade.
Oh, no, not at all.
So like, can you kind of like shed some light on the daily experience of what it was like? It's because it wasn't all or nothing. It wasn't like I was completely dissatisfied the whole time and it wasn't awful the whole time. And maybe it wasn't great the whole time either. So what was the daily kind of experience like?
I think it depends on the year too. It's just
sure.
The daily experience being, I loved being in the classroom. I loved my actual job. I always loved what I did. I always loved being in the room. I loved helping kids. Like I never questioned like what I did in the room. What would happen is all the outside stuff, that my life outside was just struggling and it was just constant. Like I didn't know, it was a lot of stress, not knowing if I was going to have a job the next year, wondering what was coming down the pike, depending on the situation I was in. My first year was extremely toxic, very traumatic. The only reason I taught a second year was to prove to myself that was not what it was supposed to be like. I was like, this can't be it. And I got into a different district and it was like glorious, and I loved it there, but I took a tremendous pay cut to do it. And I came in as an adult with like real life bills. And, I wasn't straight out of college with like no life. I had all kinds of stuff going on and I couldn't survive. So I had to leave that year. And I left that year thinking this could be the end of my career if I do this. But it was like, I have to go pay off bills so I can come back and be a teacher. And so I went and like worked 3 jobs and did a bunch of other stuff and just like paid bills so I could go back. And I was always worried that no one's going to give me another chance, and then they did. I got another job and I was like, sweet. And I'm here and this is awesome. And that year happened to be, my mom got really sick at the end of that year and I had to resign so I could go back and be near her and help her out. And same thing. I was like, this is it. Like, this is the end of my career. Like I keep ending up in these situations. And then I got a job in that town and I was like, cool. Well, then it was a 1 year only. It got absorbed by budget cuts at the end of the year. And that's when I was just like, oh my God. Okay. And there was no jobs to be had. So I ended up working at a college and another job, just waiting. And then that's when I decided to go back and get my master's. And I was like, well, if I'm going to be here, I might as well do something productive. Just thinking about what can I do with this as a teacher later, just moving toward that goal. And then I won the session with you. And that's when I was like, well, I'm moving.
Oh yeah. To Vermont.
Yeah, to Vermont. And I was like, I'm trying to get a teaching job and, and then, like I said, that all worked out. And then here we are again. And it was just like, last year after you and I coached, I was like, I don't know if I need to go home. I was quite, like you said, I was questioning everything. I was just like, life sucks right now. Like, I just didn't know, should I be teaching? Should I even be here? Like I was going through the weirdest depression from the transitions and everything I had never experienced before. And I'm like, I just feel like my whole life is wrong. Like I just need to fix everything. Like, I don't know. And then things started just like piece by piece kind of fit together. I got the new job, I moved to a new apartment, like everything.
We're going to talk about, I promise I'm going to get there, but there are just too many things that I have highlighted in my mind before I can talk to you about that. Okay. So one, something you said, or something that you're sharing in your story that I really want to highlight for people is that you have had this experience of like, it's not like you find something you love and then it's just perfect forever once you find it. so much of loving something is about riding the waves and the ups and the downs of it, and being willing to eat the shit sandwiches that come along with doing the thing that you love. And also understanding that based on the phase of life that you're in, your needs are going to change. And that's okay. I've talked to, in my world with a lot of my friends, with coaching, I've seen people sort of go, all right, I'm going to go full out with my business. And then I have a friend who had a kid. And so she had a job and she was like, you know what, I'm not going to go back after maternity leave. I'm going to go full out with my business. And after 3 years of that, she was feeling kind of burnout. And you know what she wanted? She wanted to be a thriver again. So she went back and she got a job, and now she's doing her business on the side. And she's telling me, I'm just like building up my energy. I'm like recovering. I'm making good money. And then one day I'm going to go do my business again. And that's the cyclical kind of nature of doing something you love. It's not this like linear, perfect, like progression up an XY axis. Like that's not what it looks like. There are periods of like, I'm going to go full out and then I'm going to recover and I'm going to like do this. And you know what? Now my circumstance is taking me over here. So I'm going to adapt and I'm going to try this thing now. And I'm going to make the best of it. I'm going to go back to grad school while I'm making the best of this situation. And that's what a career looks like. Like, I think we're kind of demystifying here what a career is supposed to, quote unquote, look like and what it actually does look like. And what your experience is often what a career ends up looking like, which is a little bit haphazard. And that's okay. That doesn't actually prevent you ultimately from getting where you want to go, because it hasn't prevented you from getting what you want.
No, actually, I think it better prepared me to be where I want. I think, like, you're saying a lot of good things. And the thing is, a passion is not love. I don't think it's love. It's a love-hate, definitely. Like
yeah, it's conviction. It's caring, but that doesn't always mean love.
Right.
Yeah.
There are days that I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like,
I've heard a lot of those days from you.
Yeah. Cause then like, there's just some shitty days. Like, let's be real. Like, teaching is not rainbows and butterflies, especially when it's high school, it's like, there's a lot of stuff going on. But then the next day I'm like, how could I ever want to do anything else? And there's just, definitely riding the waves. It's definitely a love-hate. And I think I had to learn that about the passion, that it's like, yeah, it's not going to be perfect, but those are the only shit sandwiches I'm willing to eat now that, and in the different years I had to trust. And that was, I think, the biggest part of it is every time I left a position, it was like, I had to trust. It was like, I was doing what was best for me at the time, that there were things I needed. There were things I had to do. If I stayed in that second year, after that, the huge pay cut, that stress would have come into my life and infiltrated my classroom. And that would have hurt my kids. Like, maybe not directly, but I would have felt it, and I wouldn't have been the teacher I wanted to be. And like, if things are so affecting us on the outside like that, it gets into everything. And I'm like, I didn't want that. So I needed to go take care of my stuff before I could be right in there. So.
And that, again, I want to highlight that aspect of your story too for people, because I think people have a big fear that if I ever leave, I can't come back. And you have had to multiple times you have backed away, and then you've come back, and you backed away and you've come back, and it wasn't a deal breaker, and it hasn't ruined your life or ruined your career. But I understand, obviously it's understandable why people have that fear. I just like that you're out here being like, no, I did it, and you can do it too. And there might be some benefit to doing, like you just said, there's benefit to doing that sometimes for your own mental health and your own well-being, but also for the people that you're trying to help and serve. Mm-hmm. So I hope that in this story so far, we're making it clear why I was convinced when I met you and started coaching you that it wasn't teaching that was the problem. Because what I saw when I met you was a very clear through line of like, this is one of the only things that's ever motivated you to go through hard shit. Like, you keep coming back to it. And it's not because it's the only thing you could do. It's because it's the only thing you've ever really given a damn about in terms of your career.
That's so true.
And you had so much, and I mean, obviously I heard you talk very, passionately about wanting to help kids and wanting to be kind of like that guiding light that kids look back on and they remember, so many of us forget our teachers, but there's always that like one or two who you remember for the rest of your life. And I just saw you wanting to be that person for adolescence. And, that was guiding you. But there was also, like you said earlier, there was a ton of doubt at some points about whether or not, if it's this hard, does this mean I'm really supposed to be doing it? And that's one of the more normal questions, maybe honestly, one of the most sane questions you can end up asking, right? Is like, if it's this challenging, am I just dense? Am I being taught a lesson that I cannot actually like digest? Am I missing something here? So one of the things you and I had to get clear on was we don't think teaching's the problem.
Right.
There's a true love and like a conviction for it, but how you're doing it and some of the thoughts you have about it are really detrimental to your ability to enjoy it and to do it in kind of a thriver way. You want to talk about that? Because there was a lot of pressure to be a tribe member when you're a teacher and you're a thriver, and that dissonance created a lot of problems for you.
It did. Because God, and I always tell people like teaching is not a career, it's a lifestyle. Like it takes over your life. And for
same with being a business owner, right?
Yeah.
Like that it takes over your whole life.
You're always thinking about it, always planning for it, always like everything that comes across your path, you're like, how can I use that? And everything is about it, even when you don't want to. Like there's no, breathing room, like, because no matter what, you're doing it. And that's hard for a thriver when you're like, my biggest CDF or CFD, core desired feeling CDF, right? Is like, it is freedom, and not the kind of freedom where I want to be a fire starter, but the kind of freedom of my time is my time. So like when I have some space and free time, like I really want to be able to enjoy it. And that was hard, like to a point where I set those boundaries. I really had to set some hard boundaries about not checking email after a certain amount of time, not over involving myself in a ton of clubs, not letting them pressure me into doing all of the things.
Because you could, as a teacher, you could literally be like the chair of this little volunteer committee, and you could literally do everything. And a lot of teachers are doing that.
Yeah, they are, and God bless them. But
that's not you.
No, I had 2 kids in the first week this year that were like, "Can you come advise my club? And can you come advise my club?" And I was like, "Nope, sorry." I'm like, "This is one." Luckily,
telling the kids no.
Yeah, no.
Great boundaries.
I had to get solid on it because I know my limits and I know my mental health and like what's best for me and how I'm going to be best in the classroom. And my first priority is I'm a teacher. Like the advising and stuff. Yes, I want part of that. Yes, I totally want to be involved in student leadership. I want to do more things, but it has to be in a way that keeps me healthy. So I had to set a lot of boundaries. And the other tribe member thing, it's also about, I found my location, the place that I'm in. The school that I'm at now has been amazing. And I have never felt as much pressure that way. Like being a tribe member is a lot more possible. I'm given a lot more autonomy, a lot more freedom, and I
being
feel
a thriver is more possible.
Yes.
Okay. You said tribe member. So I got confused for a second. No.
Yeah, me too. And I have a feeling the place that I'm going will offer me the same kind of freedom as well. So it'll be good.
I just remember very clearly how burnout you were when we first started coaching. And burnout is a really natural, first of all, it's natural for teachers, obviously, to experience burnout because they're expected to do so much and they're not paid nearly as much as they deserve to be paid for everything that they're expected to do. And on top of that, you are experiencing a very personal level of burnout because you're being expected, or at least you are in an environment that sort of unconsciously expects you to be someone that you're not.
Yes.
And anytime you have to go against the grain of how you're wired for an extended period of time, it requires so much more energy from that person. Because, if you're a real true blue tribe member teacher, it's not going to take as much energy for you to do the job because you and the job are aligned and you fit together. So there's no friction. There's no force for the most part. When you're a thriver trying to do a tribe member job, all of a sudden there's a lot more friction and there's a lot more energy expended just to do the same tasks and the same job, which means you do have to say no more often. You do have to have better boundaries. And then what we have to do after that is grapple with the guilt and the shame of why can't I be like that? Mm-hmm. And people are going to hate me if I say no. So I'm assuming it ended up, I don't remember any really big fallouts. I'm assuming it ended up not being a big issue, that you had to get solid with your boundaries and you had to be okay with being a thriver teacher, not a tribe member teacher.
Oh, it totally ended up okay. Yeah. I think it's because I was so much more solid. I wasn't wishy-washy on the boundaries now. You know what I mean? Before it was like, am I okay setting this boundary? Do I feel bad about it? And then it was like, could I do it? And I would try to talk myself into like, I don't know. And then I'm like, no, I really can't. But then it was I didn't have the conviction behind it of being like, nope. And then just no being a complete sentence, that I felt like I had to explain myself or help them understand it. And well, I'm an introvert and I'm exhausted. And like, by the time I go home, like I can't like this, I have no energy left. Like I use everything I've got during the day. Like I need the space. I need to breathe, Like I felt like I had to go through all those explanations. And I finally, through a lot of coaching with you, really is like learning how to not just set the boundaries, but recognize I don't have to explain them to anybody. I don't have to justify myself, and I don't have to make anybody else get it. I'm the only one that has to get it.
And look, no fallout.
And look, I know.
Right?
No big explosions.
Because I'm guessing people are too busy thinking about them and their priorities and their stuff to worry about what Natalie's doing after school.
I would certainly hope so. But yeah.
Right.
And I think they respect me more for being clear.
Yes. Yeah. When people see someone who's comfortable setting a boundary and not over explaining it, they're like, oh, well, we can't. She's confident. Like, okay, we're going to just take her lead because she seems to know what she's doing and she's not to be trifled with. And that's not like you being scary. It's just you sort of setting the tone of this is how we're going to interact. And people will follow a natural leader. And so if you set the tone, people will generally fall in line. It's when you're wishy-washy. Mm-hmm. It's when you're super insecure and you're like, is this okay? I don't know. That you open the space for people to then question you or push back or kind of like, it's like dogs, man. Like they can smell a beta. And so if you come in there with like alpha energy, the dogs are going to be like, respect, all right, back off. It's fine. Like, okay, we'll take her lead.
Well, I found when I started trying to explain, people fight your explanations. Like they argue with your justifications and they're like, well, yeah, you're tired, but
everyone's tired.
I know, but the kids really need you, or they'll just try to wiggle their way through your explanation. And I'm like, I need to quit offering one so that they can't really argue with me.
Isn't that like one of the most brilliant things I've heard lately? You can't argue with me if I don't give you an explanation. Perfect.
No is enough.
Right? That's amazing. If I don't argue, then you can't argue back with me. It's brilliant. So funny. Okay. So once we got clear and we set some boundaries and you were feeling better about teaching, like I did see your energy start to improve. I saw you finding more kind of enjoyment for the job again. Less doubt about whether this was the right thing for you. Because that's what happens when you're burnt out and you're exhausted and you've been doing something maybe in a way that isn't aligned with how your true nature is, then you do start to question, am I doing the wrong thing? That's one of the first symptoms of you being misaligned. So when people are wondering, am I doing the wrong thing? My feedback is always, first, let's figure out if how you're doing it is the problem. Because that's a much easier thing to get clear on. Like it's quicker to get clear on that because we could have made some adjustments and it might have made zero difference. Like you allowing yourself to be more of a thriver might have made no difference, which would have maybe then told us, okay, maybe teaching like the what is the problem. For you, it was pretty clear it was the how that was the problem. We got to start there, or else it's hard to know if what you're doing works or doesn't work.
Yeah, totally.
So once we did that, so then you got this interesting experience of being able to teach during the pandemic, which I'm sure was interesting and exhausting in its own way, but also it really allowed you to like be a thriver teacher you didn't have to go in it. You just got to teach from your house.
Oh man, I was made for quarantine. I am telling you what, like everybody, all my teacher friends were just like, we're going crazy, because they're all extroverts and they're all just like, they need all the people. And I'm like, oh no, I'm good. Like I was just fine. I'm like, I don't need to go anywhere. I mean, being back near the kids is so much better than I remembered,
Yeah. Like nice contrast, right?
Easy for me to just be like, hunker down, like right into my little space, got my little office. I'm ready. Like, I don't know. We made it work. And I don't know. I had a lot less issues than most, because it just felt good for me. Like I had redid a schedule. I was treating myself better. I did, was working out. I was made for that. So yeah.
More confirmation that you're a thriver, right? Just more validation that like, this is the thriver life. And even though life's going to go back to normal, I got to find ways to like build this into my life because this combination feels good.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So now we're kind of up to speed with the present, and let's talk about this job and the circumstances. It was kind of insane how quickly these things kind of came together. Mm-hmm. But for a long time though, leading up to this, for a couple of years, maybe like since you moved to Vermont, which is what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Almost a year and a half. Mm-hmm. Well,
okay. So
July will be 2 years. Yeah.
Okay. So 2 years ago, ever since you moved here, you've been wondering, you're like, is this the place I'm going to end up staying for a while? I don't know. Like you haven't been totally convinced this whole time. And yet you've been in this interesting holding pattern of, I'm happy with my teaching jobs but I don't know if this is where I'm really supposed to be. And you've just been waiting for like something to happen, like waiting for feedback from the universe. So I kind of want to talk about like this interesting sort of in-between phase you've been in of like, what's that been like? Of like, am I supposed to be here or not?
Well, it's really interesting. When I moved here, it was so weird. Like, like I said, obviously I've moved a million times. I never experienced anything like it. And I don't know if it's because I came here with a totally different mentality this time. Like I wanted this to be it. I wanted Vermont to be the forever home. Like it's beautiful. And I was just like, okay, like I'm coming here with I'm going to do this, which I've never done before because I don't think that way, and immediately, as soon as we got here, I was just like in this funk and depression and just went through all of these things of like, I don't love it as much as I thought I would. Like, yes, I like it. I'm not in love with it. And then it was like, I was commuting to the job and I'm like, and the job last year, it was like school utopia. It was like the school I always thought existed, but wasn't positive, so it was a beautiful environment. But the way that my job was set up was the how that I was struggling with. It was like, I wasn't able to be creative. Because I was just basically, it was a year position filling in for someone else. So I was just kind of like a body. I didn't feel like I had a lot of investment. I wasn't able to really get my creative juices flowing. And I didn't realize that was such a problem until this year, And so I struggled with just like all of it at once. And then I was like, well, I don't want to just jump off the train and just be like, well, if it's not working, I'm leaving. Like, I'm like, just give it some time and see what you think, give it another year at least. But then at the end of last year, I got recruited to interview for another position back in Colorado. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this is it. Maybe this is like universe telling me like it's time to go. And I ended up with the interview for the job I have now. and that interview. And then another one was coming up for back home. And I was like, okay. And I had the one and I didn't get it. And I was like, okay, so maybe this isn't the time, but I was like really upset. So I was like, I'm going, like, this is going to be great. I just sat down and I kind of gave the universe an ultimatum. I'm not going to say it's ultimatum, but I was just like, I need to know what I'm doing. Like, do I stay or do I go? And I need you to tell me, like, now. And 2 hours later, I got the offer for here. And I was like, okay, I feel like let's give it another year. So let's see what's going on. I accepted the position. I moved into the apartment closer, so I wasn't doing the commute. And I'm like, if I can get all these other little pieces, like, let's just see. And of course, it was still in the middle of the pandemic. And I'm like, I love my job. I love my colleagues. I still am not certain this is the place. It's like the most expensive place I've ever lived in my life. And there were just all these other things. I became very disillusioned, and just started really thinking about, I'm just not sure. And I wanted something to push me one way or the other. Like, is this what you're going to do? And so I kept thinking, well, I'll just stick it out for a couple of years and let's just see. I want to be in one position for a while. Like, I just wanted to see what that would be like, And then I was just kind of really having those conversations with the universe regularly. Like, I just don't know what I want to do. And like trying to go through the process of, am I trying to convince myself of something, or is this really what I'm wanting? Like, am I just, so then I called my mom and I was like, what's up? And she's like, well, I'm in the hospital. And I'm like, okay, like, all right. And she was in the hospital for a week, and, and I felt helpless. And I was sitting here battling a lot of emotions during that time of how I felt about that whole situation and what I was going to do. And she's okay. She's much better now, but I'm just like, if she really needed me, am I okay? Like, being here? And I'm like, I'm not. And so then it was like, boom, boom, boom. It's like, as soon as I came to the conclusion, it's like, and we're done. And I got a home today. Like, everything is done. So
this story has always been so fascinating to me, and a really amazing example of something that I heard. I don't know who said it, but it's really stuck with me, which is, if you don't yet know what to do, you don't need to do anything. Like, wait until it is obvious, because eventually it will be obvious. And you and I talked a lot about, I kind of feel like I want to move back home, but I don't know. But I don't know about Vermont. Like, there was a lot of just like, I just feel unsure. And honestly, for that long to have doubt, that in and of itself can be a sign. Like, lack of certainty about something for that long often becomes like, well, is this really the place then? Because if it was really your place, you probably would just enjoy living there and wouldn't question it.
Right.
But there also wasn't enough certainty about home to move home. And then something happened that made you feel, that finally tipped you into the place of certainty. And then once you had that, boom, 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 everything happened like super fast.
Yes.
And that's kind of how it works. It's like, and here's the thing. I don't think that was all on you. I think that there's also a matter of just divine timing, right? Because, hey, if you'd been certain a year earlier, would that job have been available for you?
Possibly. I mean, you just
maybe not. Maybe not. But like, I have to believe that the timing of you becoming certain aligned perfectly with like the job you really wanted also being available, and like yours for the snatching up.
I believe that too.
So
I absolutely believe that.
So I just, that is what divine timing like looks like and means, is like all of the components that are supposed to come together naturally do at exactly the right time. And you don't have to push it or force it. And you don't have to like try to get clear before you feel clear. Like, you got all the time in the world to get clear, and you can still then be right on time for the thing that's waiting for you.
When I started looking back on it and all the decisions in my life, like, once I was clear, everything fell together. Like, it's never been difficult. It's never been challenging. When people talk about moving and like the risks and stuff, I'm like, it just never occurred to me that it wouldn't work out. And it always does, because I'm so sure that it's the decision I want to make, and it's like you always said, if there's no plan B, plan A has to work. And that sticks in my head so much all the time, because it's just like, well, yeah, of course. Like, you do the thing, you take the leap, and it just somehow, because the universe is awesome, just works out. Because I also believe it's all working in my favor. I don't think that anything works against me. It's always looking out for me. And even when things aren't going the way I want them to, that's because there's something better on the horizon for me. And so I'm always living by that creed, I guess.
So tell us why this job, like, this is the job that you've been wanting for 13 years. So why?
It was a little bit of everything. Ironically, the school I lived across the street from it when I was finishing my teaching. And I was like, wouldn't it just be really cool to work right there? I just think that'd be really neat. And I loved the content and the town that I was in. I never wanted to leave. Like, when I was living there, that was my place. I always felt so good there, because it's not home. It's like across the border from home. So it's close, but not too close. You know what I'm saying? So, which is a much healthier option for me. But so,
I feel you.
yeah, I want to be close. I can't be there. And it's a very competitive place to be. Like, it's really hard to get in. Obviously not now. I don't know, not for me now, but it was then, and I just always wanted to be there. And I always wanted to live in the town. I was always attracted to the school for whatever reason. And really, this is my content, like, where I am most passionate teaching wise, my content. So all three things were just like, this was the perfect storm.
I love, like, when things come full circle and you're like, I don't know, maybe it's my type 4 talking, but I just love when you can kind of time travel a little bit and be like, oh yeah, like, that was my past self kind of like envisioning my current reality. Like, that's a pretty cool thing when you can go back and be like, oh yeah, I actually thought about this happening and now I'm living that. It's like I time traveled.
Well, and knowing that it had to happen just the way that it did.
With all the moves.
All of it.
And exactly, right? Like, to end up at this place I wanted to be, like, 13 years ago. And also, you just said this is a competitive thing. It's not like, this is a competitive job. It wasn't like a dime a dozen type of situation. And they hired me with all of my random, like, moves in my resume, right? Like, that was not a disadvantage to you.
No, I think that it actually was an advantage in the sense that the experience that it's given me, and I am such a different person now than I was then, that I'm a better teacher. I'm a better human, I think, and I'm more equipped now to go into that position knowing that, okay, I'm ready to make this home. And I think if I had gotten it 13 years ago, I don't know if all that wanderlust was out of my system. I don't know if I would have been able to stay. I wonder if I would have still left a couple years later being like, I need to see the world. I need to go check things out. I've moved so much since my first year of teaching. I moved to California. I was living I was all over the place. So I'm just like, would I have been okay staying there? So would I have ended up in the exact same position where I'm like, or would I have left it and then now be wishing I could go back and have, no one will take me or something, who knows? It could have ended up so different. I just don't think I was ready. I think that I had to go through everything I could so I could be the right fit for it now.
That is an excellent point. And I think that's true, is that if it happened too soon, you might not have appreciated what it really was. And sometimes we need contrast and wisdom before we can actually, like, deeply enjoy something and get the most out of it and be the best teacher too. So again, and like, now you got your wanderlust out of your system. I have a feeling you're not going to be, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, in like 2 years, but I have a feeling you're not going to be itching to move as soon as you might have anywhere else.
Yeah, definitely not. I'll be sticking around for a while. My mom's there, so I'm not going anywhere.
And also the feelings you're talking about having and just about the town are so different than how you describe feeling as soon as you moved to Vermont, which is like, it never felt quite right.
No, it never did. I could just feel it. I just knew. I don't know. I just knew. I could feel it to the bone, and like I like it, and I really couldn't even pinpoint what was wrong with it. I just knew that I wasn't in line with it, and I'm like, something's just off. And after a year and a half, I'm like, I still feel like something's just off. And I'm like, this is just not the place for me. But I'm like, but there was nothing wrong, and that was the argument I kept having with myself. It's like, but everything's fine. Like I have a great job, I get paid well, I've got great colleagues. Like I'm in a home. My neighbors are terrible, but I'm in I've got a nice place. And I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong, but there wasn't things right either. Like things just weren't right. So I'm like, I gotta go.
Things being not wrong, is not equivalent to them being right.
True.
Good point.
Yes.
One that people need to drill home. If there's maybe one or two things you take away from this conversation, I think that's a really good one.
Yes.
If you have that sense of like, well, I don't know, there's nothing wrong with it, but you don't feel an overwhelming sense of rightness, which I think you feel now about your next move, then that means there is something amiss that needs to be there. There is something wrong. If that's perpetually how you feel, that means there's a lot more potential that is being left untapped.
Yeah. The thing wrong is that it doesn't feel right. That's the thing that's wrong. And if you're saying, well, there's nothing wrong with it, except it's that.
Yeah.
That you even have to say that. Like if you felt good, you wouldn't even have to say that.
100%. I mean, I love comparing jobs and dating and that type of stuff. And it's like,
oh, yes.
Who wants to marry someone who they're saying that about? Like, well, there's nothing wrong with him. Wow.
No, right. And
inspiring.
How many people stay in relationships way too long for that reason? They're like, well, there's nothing really wrong with it. It's comfortable. Like, he's nice. It's a good relationship, but it's like, but it's not great. You don't feel great. You're not excited. It doesn't light you up. Like there's nothing about the experience that's making you want more, making you want to be better. It's just, you're just there. And I'm tired of being just there. I don't want to be there. I want to be excited,
Yeah. Another way to say it is, even if you're not super dim, that's not the same as being lit up.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have to be totally lights off, but like if you're not lit up, that's a problem. If you got like a dimmer switch on halfway, that's not ideal lighting for this, for our careers.
Not for life.
Or love, anything. Like it's not ideal. So permission to stop, because when we are saying there's nothing wrong, it's all coming from our head. It means we are detached from how we actually feel.
Mm-hmm.
It means we're intellectualizing the situation and we're not allowing our feelings to actually lead the way.
Which I'm a master at. So.
Of course. Yeah. But you're also now a master at knowing the difference because you've done both things now. I've intellectualized and justified and rationalized, which is all up in my head. And I've also led with my intuition and my feelings. And I can tell you that the latter is a lot more fulfilling and leads to a lot better things.
Well, it's frustrating because I look back on all of this experience and it's like all the decisions I made that came together and were just like, I have manifested incredible things through my life. Every once in a while, I just forget. It's like I go brain dead and I'm like,
me too.
It's like, remember all those times that everything was awesome and perfect and like things just fell together because you stopped thinking about it? Remember that? And I'm like, yeah, but I still need to think about this for about 20 more minutes times a lot, and then I drive myself crazy. I just think in circles and it's like, okay, gotta slow that down. Because I already know if I just sit back. I guess this is what you guys have been talking a lot about lately is that feminine energy. Like whenever I just sit back and I just trust and I let it go, like I know that it's all going to come forward and it's going to be fine. It's just getting myself out of my head long enough to let it happen.
Well, you are a master at it. I mean, no, you really, I mean, like you always have the best stories. You always are like, you know, you're always, you and the universe are on good terms is what I'll say.
We are.
Yeah. You guys are buds.
Yeah. My pal, you. Yep.
So tell people about, you're taking a road trip, right?
I am. Yeah.
In order to get to where you're going.
Oh, that one too. Yep.
Oh yeah. Okay. You're doing multiple road trips.
I am. As soon as school ends, I'm taking 2 weeks and I'm driving down the East Coast to visit all my friends. And I take a solo trip every summer and just sit on the beach for 4 days and read books and not talk to anybody.
Amazing. Introvert goals.
Yes. That's how I regroup. And I just sit and listen to the water and drink coffee on my balcony and just ignore the world. And it's perfect. And then drive back up. So it's a lot of driving. But yeah, so I've got friends in like North Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, and then might try to catch you for coffee on my way through.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I should be here.
Yeah. So I'm going to stop and see all those people on the way. And then I'll be here I'm going to enjoy the summer here because I haven't really had a chance to do that. And then I'm out at the end of August and taking that 2,000-mile trip across the country.
And starting school, what, in September or late August?
Oh, early August. I get like
early August.
A couple days. They start earlier than here and we get out later here. So I'm losing like half my summer, but it's okay. So,
well, I mean, a price to pay to get where you wanted to be.
Yeah, it's only for this summer. Next summer we'll be back to normal because I'll still be there and I'm not going anywhere. So
okay.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for you. I love, it's funny. Kristen had someone on back in January, Christina, and her episode was about like how she quit her job with no plan and ended up with a new one 24 hours later.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And I do think it's funny that like the theme of this conversation is like almost the exact opposite and the same, which is, it took you 13 years to get the job you always had your eye on. But in that time, so many things have come together in that lightning speed too. Like when there was alignment, things flowed.
Well, and I'll also say, I think probably the key was I let it go. I wanted it 13 years ago, but I wasn't grasping it, holding on to it, like thinking I have to have that one, it's like I let it go and let the path lead me wherever it was going to take me. And it just happened to bring me back around,
Exactly. Yep. It's so easy to say that and it's very hard to do, but you were open to where you were actually being led as opposed to assuming that you knew what was right at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
And it took you on some wild rides and you had some adventures and now you're back kind of where you originally thought you wanted to be.
Exactly. Yep. And I wouldn't have changed a thing.
That's the goal. Thank you. This is awesome. This is a great conversation.
Awesome. Thank
you. I can't wait to hear how it goes. Once you start. You're welcome to come back on the podcast at any time and give us an update.
That'd be awesome.
Unless it's like, I hate this job. And then we'd be like, well, that's going to just ruin our whole interview, Natalie. No, I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so either.
I don't think so. But thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll check in once you started. Well, first of all, I might see you in person this summer, which will be
I'll be
exciting.
through in June. I'll shoot you dates.
Okay. And then we'll find out how this job goes once you started in August.
Sounds great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we will be back next Friday we've already teased what this episode's going to be about the side chat about feminine energy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of you have been asking questions.
Yeah.
Since my episode with Carolyn
last month.
And so we're going to do a deep dive.
Mm-hmm. My intention as of now, we haven't recorded it yet, but my intention as of now is to give you, because you're like, but how do I do it? Well, I'm like, well, okay. First of all, let's think about it less as doing and more as being. But anyway, I actually am going to break it down into steps
Mhm.
because I know people be liking steps. So
and answering some of the questions we've been getting ever since that episode.
I think that in outlining the steps, we will answer the questions. But I'll be sure that any questions we have gotten since that episode, we will address indirectly or directly in the episode next week about, I don't know what we're going to call it, but it's going to be a deeper dive into how to actually do feminine energy, which is an oxymoron, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay.
Okay. See you then.